Thank you. I want to take just a moment to recognize my collaborators. At the time of the study, we were all employees of the Department of Fish and Wildlife, and now 2 of us have retired, so this is getting to be dated data. So swamp harebell is a rhizomatous perennial herb in the bellflower family. It has stems up to about 30 centimeters long. It's clambering, doesn't have a lot of structural support. It has opposite ovate leaves and small blue flowers. It grows in mesec situations. As I said, it has clambering branches. It has stiff, recurved hairs on it that help it cling to the vegetation that it's around. Its distribution is Mendocino, Sonoma, and Marin counties, with probably believed to be extirpated in one site in Santa Cruz County. It is not currently listed under the Federal or State Endangered Species Act. However, both the Department of Fish and Wildlife and the Native Plant Society consider it to be threatened and endangered with a moderate degree of threat, both immediacy and degree. Therefore, the Department of Fish and Wildlife, when it's reviewing projects under a CEQA hat, will look at the project for impacts and has concerns about significant impacts, and will develop mitigation measures when we appropriate to recommend those. For the THP at hand, we actually did not provide any recommendations for the benefit of the swamp harebell, but we did arrange with the landowner and the RPF to conduct this monitoring study of its response to the timber harvest. So swamp harebell this THP is located in northern, from this angle, that's horrible, in northwestern Sonoma County, just south of Stewart's Point in the Horseshoe Cove area. The THP proposed to harvest using selection and alternate prescription, a fairly light harvest in a Redwood, Douglas fir, and Bishop pine forest. So the study was a before-after controlled impact study with repeated measures. We had 4 years, 1 year pre-project, 2003. The timber harvest occurred later that summer, and then in 2004, 2006, and 2008, we revisited all the sites. We collected the data in July every year, I think in the first 2 weeks every year, so there was consistent calendar timing. We went to the site prior to harvest and identified a bunch of clusters of swamp harebell, and then based on the mark at the site, the flagging, the tree marking, etc., we assigned those clusters to 4 different treatments that they were going to experience. The first one up here is we thought it would be just a reduced shade site. There wouldn't be any ground disturbance or anything like that. The second one over there at the top right was full operations, no restrictions at all. Something was going to happen right on the site. Third one was road reopening and use, and then the fourth one was control sites. And then this sequence from left to right, bottom to right, will be used in some of the graphs that follow later. The metrics for the campanula that we used were ground cover and stem counts. The ground cover was based on a 1 by 3 meter plot oriented to capture the best topographic variables at the site where the fat was found. On the road, it was along the gradient, along the axis of the road. On the hill slope, it was usually up and down. Well, the lengthwise axis was across the contour, normally on a swale. They were often down in swales. Cover in a 3 by 1 meter plot was ranked into 5 percentage classes. And then we had stem counts in 5 30 by 30 centimeter boxes that were systematically located within the cover plot. We measured shade with the solar pathfinder. It actually is a measure of either the amount of solar radiation that reaches the site for a given time, or inversely, it's the amount of solar radiation that's shaded by canopy. And we used the month of August on this, and so the months are in arcs across there, and you can see, if maybe you can see, August is the fourth arc up. And the protocol is set the pathfinder up facing south as you normally do, put the plate on, and then you look at the canopy across the surface there, and you accumulate the solar energy values for each half-hour period, sum them up, and you've got the amount of shade. We also took a subjective assessment of the shade, but we found that to be really unusable for our purposes, so we're not going to do any more with that. We also recorded some observations on soil moisture and character. Again, that was too subjective for much use for this presentation, so there won't be any more on that, even though we think soil moisture is a really critical point. And we have information on associated species from really only 1 year, and it wasn't collected in such a way that we could use it to assess the potential relationship between timber harvest and the response to swamp Harebell. So we don't have any good analysis on that point. So for the results, I've got 3 slides with graphs on them, and those are going to be separated by what I'm calling bumper slides, and this is my first bumper slide to describe a bumper slide. But what it has, the bumper slides will have 4 slides, and it will go from, each one is in this order: 2003, 2004, first year post-harvest; 2006, that's 3 years post-harvest, and this is 2008, 5 years post-harvest. This was a canopy shade reduction site, S12. So here's my first bumper, right after the first bumper. This is for full operations, site S9. Same sequence for years. This is the full operations. And for canopy and shade over the plants, I don't really expect you to look closely at the table, except to point out that the second set of numbers is the range for those sites. And the biggest change we had was a 85% to 55% shade. And the bottom graph shows, it doesn't show. There's a line that doesn't show that comes down like that. So it was one site that did that to the range. Oh, you can see it? Oh, okay. Thank you. So anyway, there was only one site that had that huge drop. All the other sites had variations fairly similar to those other sites. The maximum was about 20%. So here's my road bumper. Again, same year sequence, 3 projects, first year, post-project, 3rd and 5th. That's the same site, same vantage. For cover, again, this was the cover on the 3 by 1 meter plot. The cover class for the shade reduction in the upper left. There was no change from first year post-harvest to second, from pre-harvest to first year post-harvest. Then there's a decline at one of the sites, and they all remained at class 1 for the remainder of the study period. We didn't consider that to be any substantial change. For the cover class with unlimited seminar operations, boy, that is, looking at that one over there. I'm really sorry. So that is, we consider that to be very variable. I got some notes here I want to make sure I don't miss. One plot dropped from the 5 to 10% to the 0 to 5% at year 1, and then it remained for subsequent years. 2 of the plots remained at the cover class 1 for the entire study. 1 plot jumped from up to a cover class of 3, and then dropped back down to a 1 by the end of the study. And 1 plot was extirpated by the end of the study. And here's another bumper showing the control site, this control site S14. Again, the same year sequence in the pictures. So this is a plant count, the stem count in the 5 30 by 30 meter, 30 by 30 centimeter subplots. These were all summed, so each one of those is 5 of those plots added together. In the reduced shade, they're essentially from the pre-project to the first post-project year, we consider that to be essentially no change, but from the second to the 5th year, there was a big drop at one of the sites. 80% decline in that year for that site, and it stayed about the same. For the unlimited timber operations, that slide, or that picture is horrible. All the sites declined from pre-project to post-project year. One site, however, jumped in the from the first post-project to the third by greater than 8-time an 8-fold increase. And then one site also was extirpated by the end of the study. On the roads, all the sites declined from pre-project to the first year post-project and remained very low through the remainder of the study. One site was extirpated. And then the controls all declined. One site declined by 55% the first year of, between the pre-project and the post-project first year, and they all continued to decline. By the end of the study, 2 had been extirpated. So we started thinking about the fact that it appeared that timber harvest had little effect on shade canopy, and we were wondering whether that was just a problem with our methods or whether it was a real situation. And we had a protocol that we trained each other. We got within about 5% of the same value every time we did it amongst the people. So we think that the tool was used appropriately. It might have been better that we had one reading per plot right in the center of the plot. It might have been better to have a few more readings somehow situated on the plot, but I'm not sure that would have gotten us too much better information. So we think that the decline in the canopy was real. I mean, the degree of decline in the canopy was real. We think we got a good measure there. We were also a little bit concerned about our cover classes being fairly difficult to decipher any impacts from and make any real strong statements from. So we questioned, well, why did we first decide to monitor 2 metrics of swamp Harebell? And it's because of the growth form of the plant. If it's sprawling in a good situation, it can be pretty dense, and it can be very difficult to count. If it's thin and not, then the plants are fairly easy to count. In this situation, we think our stem counts of those 5 subplots are accurate. We questioned more our cover classes. We plotted the number of plants against cover class, and we got the relation we would have expected, but there is a lot of overlap. So we think that kind of points out that, well, one of 2 things. One is that just differences in the robustness of the plants could do that to you between sites and years. So it might be accurate, or also it points out the possibility that we needed to have better QA/QC on us in our interpretation of the sites. Operational impacts, let me explain this graph just for a moment. The x-axis is the count of 2008 divided by 2003. So anything that increased over the study would be way to the right, and anything that decreased would be way to the left. And 100% where they would be in the same pre-project at versus end is 100% right here. And on the y-axis is a measure of the shade reduction in the first year from 2003 to 2004. And you can see the shade reduction mostly was 80% or less. But what you can really see from this is that only 3 sites ended up with more swamp Harebell at the end of the project than at the pre-project period. Fully 25% were extirpated by the end of the project, and 80% of the sites had less than 50% of the pre-project numbers by the end of the project. taken at face value, this is a fairly condemning picture about the impacts of timber harvest on swamp Harebell. But the picture is more complicated than that. The site with the most swamp Harebell at the end was site S8. It was in a full operation site. One of the other sites that increased was a full operation site. Two of the sites that we had assigned to controls were extirpated. And at the site S8, we noticed during the field work and attributed this increase to the spreading of the branch slash around the site, which appeared to really keep the moisture on site a lot longer and reduce the runoff. So timber harvest per se doesn't have to be bad for swamp Harebell if it results in positive habitat conditions. Is that circular? We did have pigs at two sites in 2 years. Both times the swamp Harebell numbers and cover declined immediately, but had recovered mostly by the next visit. So our conclusion on the pigs was that the intensity that they were rooting, the impacts were immediate but not persistent. And unfortunately, as I said, we did collect data on associated species, but not in a way that really allows us to assess whether competition that resulted from a change in the plant community as a result of timber harvest had any effect. It's a common concern, and we just didn't have the data to analyze that. So the swamp Harebell is pretty well known to be a mesec-oriented plant. That complicates our interpretation a bit. We conducted our study during a fairly severe drought period. The Palmer Drought Severity Index indexes the moisture dryness conditions every year, all the time, in a way that's meaningful to plants. And you can see that in our pre-harvest monitoring, it was following 3 years of dry years. The prior 2 years were very severe droughts. The first year of post-harvest monitoring was a very severe drought. Our third year was during a wet spring and following a very wet year. We doubt whether that, or we question whether that was enough time for any recovery to be utilized by the plants. And then the fifth year was a very severe drought. So the dry climate, we think, is consistent with our findings, especially if you look at the control plots. Best explanation for that. We do believe this is a case study, and it's for a number of reasons. First of all, the proximity of the sites, they're all very close, so they're really not entirely independent. I have to say that from the start. This map shows the sites going up in this area. That's about 300 meters. It's not a huge area. The sample size was small within the treatments. The THP is small within the range, very small relative to the range of the entire species. It was a single time frame with a single treatment, one specific climatic pattern around it, and very limited silviculture and harvest intensity. But still, we think that our findings are strong. I'll finish up real quick here. That the negative impacts we saw at the roads were real and likely due to compaction of the roads. That the minor canopy changes that we had on site probably are not impacting the campanula, at least in similar settings. And that the practice of spreading slash lightly across an area can be beneficial for the plant in holding moisture on the surface. And I've run out of time. I just want to acknowledge the landowner, the RPF, who arranged for us to do this study over an extended period of time, some of our other data collectors, and the supervisors that made it possible for us to do. Thank you.